Greetings all. Hi. Yes, I'm also super stoked for this presentation. Um, and I'm sure I'm going to be learning new things as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is F.A. Osarin. I am the founder of Doula Chronicles. I am a birth worker here in New York City, directly Brooklyn. Doula Chronicles Reproductive Futurism is a virtual gathering in honor of the work of Lorretta and Octavia Butler. We will be following in their footsteps on dreaming and creating what a better future around pregnancy and birth can look like. As birth workers, we're on the front lines of this maternal health crisis. We witness near misses, mistreatment from healthcare staff, and obstetric violence. Grieving and mourning is a part of our work, but so is creating anew where it didn't exist before. This is a space to share with your comrades what the future can look like. As said by one of our elders, Jenny Joseph, we are in the business of saving lives. Today, I am here with Portia Brown with Orgasmic Pregnancy. Portia is a sex educator and coach based in New York City. She specializes in sex communication, enhancing orgasms and consent. She teaches and coaches from survivor-centered lens and prioritizes the needs of Black femmes. She offers virtual workshops and one-on-one virtual coaching and can be found at Froetic Sexology on all social media platforms. Welcome, Portia. Super
excited. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so honored that you have created this space and invited me to participate in this way. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. FA is doing an amazing work. I'm sure everyone who has sat here virtually with you this weekend has shared that with the people watching and just sort of wanted to bestow that affirmation upon you. But yes, this is dynamic, this is revolutionary, this is incredible, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. It's just the start, and I can't wait to see where you take this space from here. So I just want to preface.
I can't either.
Yeah, because you can feel it from the moment you said that you were going to do this. You could feel that this was going to be really life-changing and revolutionary. So I'm really excited to be a part of it, and I am excited to get this conversation going. I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now. I've been surveying my friends and the people in my life who have been pregnant and sort of picking their brains for concerns, ideas, just wanting to get as full a scope of this topic as possible. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I will bypass my introduction because FA did a great job of introducing me. But if you don't know, my name is Portia. I'm a sex educator and coach based in Brooklyn. And we're going to talk about orgasmic pregnancy today and sort of some of the taboos, the colonized thoughts, the buried ideas and old ways of thinking when it comes to the intersection of pregnancy, birth, postpartum care, and sex and sexuality. My intention for this conversation, and I do really intend it to be as much of a conversation as possible, is to start to build a world where pregnant people have radically authentic access to their sexuality. They feel entitled to their sexuality in their pregnancy, so much so that it spills over into the rest of their lives beyond pregnancy and birth, right? Because we want to start good habits during this fertile period and on this fertile ground that will spill over into the rest of who pregnant people are on this earth. And I also want to invite everyone on this call, whether you are a birthing person, you have been pregnant, you are trying to get pregnant, whether you are a birth worker, you are an ally, I want to encourage you to also decolonize, to investigate your thoughts about sex and sexuality as it relates to pregnancy. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what everything that I try to do is about, is sort of decolonizing our sex and sexuality and our thoughts around it. Yeah, so please feel free to participate in the chat and in the Q&A box as much or as little as you feel comfortable. I know it's toward the end of the day, it's Monday. Maybe you're a little tired. You can always save your questions for a later date. But if you feel comfortable asking questions now, there is a Q&A box We'll be answering questions at the end, but feel free to drop your thoughts, your opinions, things that come up for you, jokes, questions, anything as we go in the chat. And I'll do my best to sort of observe that and bring that into the conversation as well, because I have a lot of information, but I will never have as much information as we all do collectively. So please know that everything you think, everything that comes up for you is important, and it is welcome in this conversation, especially if what comes up for you is, Portia, you're talking too fast, because I have a tendency to do that. So if that happens, please let me know. So here's an overview of what we're going to discuss. In all of my workshops, I love to do myth busting right out of the gate, because when it comes to sex and sexuality, there are so many myths, so many limiting beliefs. So we're going to start with that conversation. We'll talk about pregnancy as it relates to libido and some of the things that are going on there, how sex might be different during pregnancy, so we know what to anticipate as we work with pregnant people or as we are pregnant people, how sex can support your pregnancy and enhance the experience of being pregnant, and how it can aid postpartum recovery. We're going to get into some details about positions, some things that can aid pregnant people who are attempting to have sex, and pregnant intimacy beyond penetration. One thing I forgot to put on here was we are going to talk a little about postpartum sex and also stress and how all of those things tie in towards the end of this conversation. So here are some of my core beliefs and sort of the ideas that I would like us to all take on as we go through this conversation, because I think they are extremely important and extremely valuable to the lens that we're going to have this conversation through, right? So one of the things I always say on my platform is that pleasure, you are divine and deserving of pleasure. Pleasure is a divine right for all of us. It is an inherent gift that the universe has bestowed upon us to be able to experience pleasure in the physical sense. And that does not end when a person is pregnant or when their partner is pregnant, does not end when they become a parent. It is only that much more important and that much more vital to our survival, right? That access to pleasure. Sex does not need to include penetration. A lot of times when we talk about pregnancy and sex, some of the myths that come up and the concerns that come up come with ideas of heteronormative sex. They come with ideas that are centered around the phallus, and that may not be what we're even talking about. So when I talk about sex, it doesn't necessarily mean penetrative sex. And dropping down to the third bullet point, it doesn't even necessarily mean partnered sex. When I say sex, I could be talking about sex with oneself, could be talking about self-pleasuring practices, things like that. I will try to distinguish which form of sex I'm talking about. But if I just say sex, know that I could be talking about any of the iterations and permutations of sex, right? As birth workers, advocates, allies, it is our job to investigate and decolonize our own views about sex and how sex relates to pregnancy, birth, and postpartum care. I said this in the beginning. I think it's very important. And as a sex educator, it's a lot of work for me to investigate my own beliefs, my own colonized thoughts, and my own limiting ways of thinking around sex and sexuality. And half of the work of being a sex educator is removing those constraints from my life. And I'm sure there are tons of birth workers on this call who can relate, right? A lot of your work is removing your own colonized thoughts about birth, right? So ultimately, centering pleasure is what we're going to be talking about. Centering pleasure during pregnancy is the start. But the tools that we're going to talk about today should be applied to all stages of one's life beyond pregnancy, beyond birth, right? This is a moment when we encounter people who are pregnant, or we maybe become pregnant ourselves, to encourage people to begin to center pleasure and to begin to claim ownership over their sexuality in that moment, right? But it doesn't stop there. And I guess I just want to drive home that a lot of what we are going to be talking about is applicable and specific to pregnant people, but it can be applied to anyone at any stage of their life, and it is valid in any of those stages of our lives. So All right, so let's do some myth busting. And if you have other myths around sex and pregnancy, uncertainties that often come up for pregnant people that you know, or perhaps if you've been pregnant, drop them in the chat. This is not at all an exhaustive list, but I'm going to read some of this. So one myth is sex during pregnancy is dangerous for the baby. Sex during pregnancy is always painful or uncomfortable. Pregnant people don't have a desire for sex or lose all desire for sex. Pregnant sex is awkward. Pregnant people are too delicate for sex. Orgasms during pregnancy are harmful to the baby. Sex after birth is always painful or difficult. There's a problem if sex after birth is painful or difficult. Pregnant people can't/should not use sex toys. So those are some of the limiting beliefs, right? There's a lot of mystery, misconception, colonization around pregnancy and sex as individual concepts and individual events in our lives. But when you marry the two together, it becomes that much more murky and difficult to discuss, and a lot more misinformation sort of in the atmosphere. So I wanted to talk through some of the limiting beliefs that are just out there in our collective psyche and put them out there for discussion and for us to all examine as individuals and think, where maybe have I heard this? Where did I hear this idea come from? Was it something that my grandmother told me or a relative? Is it something that I learned through pop culture, on a sitcom, in a magazine, et cetera, et cetera? And is it actually mine to believe? Is it actually based in facts and truth and evidence? Is it actually based in people's lived experiences? If so, why? If not, why am I holding on to these ideas? Okay. So let's talk pregnancy and libido, because as we addressed, one of the limiting beliefs is that people who become pregnant do not have a sex drive. I've seen that concept come up in many, many sitcoms, but it's not necessarily people's lived reality. Feelings about sex and desire can change due to hormonal imbalances, right? Or excuse me, hormonal changes. We know this because so much has to happen on a physical level in order for someone to carry a baby. Obviously, hormones are changing. That can result in a plethora of different experiences for people. There is a spectrum of perhaps you don't have a very high sex drive, you don't have a very high libido, or all the way up to you have the highest libido you've ever had. And it can flex and fluctuate and change over the course of the pregnancy. A lot of people are concerned with this, whether they experience one extreme or the other, or some combination of the two over the course of their pregnancy. All of that is normal. So whether you don't have sex at all, you have no sex drive for the entirety of your pregnancy, yep, totally normal, totally okay. Or if you have the highest sex drive you've ever experienced, totally normal, totally okay, and everything in between. If your libido changes or your desire for sex changes, it could be due to just adjusting to your body as your body alters and grows. It could be nausea, could be fatigue, could be a little weight gain. It could be any combination of those things. Many people report feeling an increased sex drive because there's an increase in blood flow to the breast and chest area, to your genitals. There can be increased sensation and sensitivity, which depending on your body chemistry and makeup, that increased sensitivity and sensation can be really great, or it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So everyone's experience is different, and all of it is welcome and normal, right? Yeah, some people report having lowered sex drive due to, again, adjusting to their new body. Some people have increased sex drive due to adjusting to their new body. Oftentimes, depending on your gender expression, you may feel a heightened sense of femininity as your body grows and changes, which can make you feel more confident, make you feel more sexy, and make you feel more apt to having sex. So ultimately, just wanting to press and affirm that all of these experiences are normal. All of these experiences are fine, and all of them are subject to change over the course of the pregnancy. That doesn't necessarily mean that anything needs to be done to fix it, to alter it one way or the other, but just being prepared for either outcome and having a plan with, if you have a partner, having a plan with that person, how are we going to deal with any of these outcomes, right? Okay, so how might sex be different during pregnancy? So much is happening in the body over the course of gestation. Obviously, things can be a little bit different. Some people experience a change in their stamina, meaning how long they are able to have sex, how long they are able to participate and be present. Some people have shortness of breath. Towards the beginning and end of the pregnancy, they may experience breast or chest tenderness, a change in lubrication levels. Some people report very high lubrication levels. Some people report a lot less and have a lot of dryness in the yoni area, just depending again on where those hormones are, a change in sensation and sensitivity, increased flexibility. As we know, the bones become more flexible and the ligaments become more flexible as we get closer to delivery. So maybe you can find yourself able to bend in positions you have not been able to before, which can be fun, but we must be careful because we don't want to overextend our bodies and potentially hurt ourselves, right? The position of the cervix may change, so it may be a little lower. So if your partner is penetrating you, they may feel it. You may feel it. It may be pleasurable. It may be painful. Again, it just depends on your hormones and what your body likes. Some people experience cramps post-sex or post-orgasm in their abdomen or groin area. This is normal. It should not be too painful. Usually you can soothe yourself by simply rubbing the area, getting in the shower or bath, taking a few deep breaths, and the sort of cramping will subside. Yes, the cervix does shift too. The cervix is always moving during sex. During arousal, it goes up higher into the vaginal canal and closer to the uterus. But obviously when you are carrying a child, your cervix may not go as high, if that makes sense, as it normally would if you were not pregnant. So even though it is shifting upward, it's not ascending as high as if you were not pregnant. So when you go to have penetrative sex, however you are doing it, you may experience contact with the cervix that you didn't have before because your cervix is in a new position. So that's where we have to go take it kind of easy, make sure that pressure to the cervix isn't painful to you. Some people find contact with their cervix very pleasurable. Some people do not. So if you're unsure, then just sort of tread lightly until you find out what sort of touch you would enjoy or which ones you maybe won't. Okay, so how sex can support you during pregnancy and postpartum recovery. So sex and orgasms are known to help tone your pelvic floor. An orgasm in particular, whether it comes from penetrative sex, which most orgasms do not, but if it does, or it happens during penetrative sex, it's all just a contraction of those muscles, right? Which encourages toning and strengthening of the pelvic floor, which is obviously great for not only birthing, but also for postpartum recovery. If those muscles are more toned and more strengthened, recovery is faster. You have more strength to do pushing and deliver the child, right? Some motions during sex, because you're sort of swaying, not really swaying, but moving back and forth, can be comforting to the baby, actually. Kind of like if you envision actually holding a child and rocking back and forth, it can mimic that same sort of sensation for them. A lot of people report that after sex, once their child is to a point where they can feel kicks, they're at the stage where you can feel kicks. There's a lot of kicking maybe during sex or after sex. Completely fine. They're not telling you to knock it off. They're not telling you they're in distress. It's just a response to the motion that is happening. And it's completely normal. Studies show that people who have sex late in pregnancy may be more likely to carry to term. Obviously, this is not a guarantee. A lot of factors can contribute to this, but one of the main things that happens is sex makes us feel good. we release a ton of hormones that make us happy, make us feel more relaxed, that make us feel better. All of these things contribute greatly to the health of the pregnant person, and therefore how long they're able to carry the child, right? So sex is a wonderful way to support your stress levels and all of that stuff. It's also a great way to have bonding with your partner. It reminds you, that you're two individuals, you're human beings, you're not just mom and dad, you're not just parents, you're whole people that are deserving of pleasure. So it's a great way to bond with your partner and strengthen that connection with them. It helps with the connection that you will have during delivery. Hopefully that person is supporting you, or you have someone that you can be intimate with, not necessarily sexually, but intimate with, that is going to be supporting the pregnant person during the delivery. If it is an intimate situation, sex is a wonderful way to increase that bond. Pain and discomfort can be eased by sex. A lot of changes happening in the body again. So there may be some discomfort. Sex is a great way to relieve that pain because those feel-good hormones come through. It's a great way to sort of medicate or deal with the discomfort that comes with being pregnant and your body changing, right? Also improve sleep, which is something that a lot of pregnant folks have trouble with, especially as they get closer to their due date or closer to delivery. It can help relax you a lot more. It releases hormones that make you feel relaxed and even sleepy. So if you're having trouble sleeping, maybe not having sex, but even self-pleasuring is a way to help aid that. Oxytocin, the love hormone. It's released during sex, during breastfeeding, during birth, during orgasm. All of it is great for during pregnancy, during birth, and all of these different stages. Its main function during labor is to help bring on contractions. It relieves stress, reduces pain during labor, and also during sex, beta endorphins are released, which have a similar function, stress relief, all of that good stuff, pain relief, all that stuff. But it also helps develop the baby's lungs while the baby is in your utero. So having sex, centering pleasure, all of that is a great way to take care of the main stressors, take care of the main discomforts that happen while a person is pregnant. So centering pleasure during pregnancy. How can we indulge in pleasure during our pregnancy? How can we be more intentional about experiencing pleasure and making it a part of our self-care sort of package while we are pregnant? Some of the suggestions that we have are to be more intentional about self-pleasure or partnered pleasure. If you were not doing this before, if you were not carving out time in your life to experience pleasure either alone or with your partner, this is something that you should be doing now. I say somewhere in here that we should be making pleasure as important as taking prenatal vitamins, as going to prenatal hospital visits or doctor visits or midwife visits. It should be as important as any other measure you would take to take care of yourself and this baby during the pregnancy. Pleasure doesn't always necessarily mean sex. It doesn't necessarily mean masturbation and self-pleasure. It means the feeling of relaxation, the feeling of sensuality, the feeling of sex, I guess I should say, that the feelings that sex bring on, that is what we're wanting to center during our pregnancies, right? And that can be exploring new forms of sex and intimacy as the body changes and adjusts. So maybe you and your partner mainly, before you are pregnant, you're mainly exploring sex through penetration. Perhaps during pregnancy, that's not as accessible to you. Maybe you want to try something new to accommodate for your changing your body, for your changing energy levels. Maybe that means investigating some other forms of intimacy and sex. We'll get into what those are in a little bit, I think on the next slide. Again, pleasure does not always have to be explicitly sexual. Consider it not the end itself, but the means to an end. What do I mean by this? Pleasure while pregnant creates lower stress levels, more happy and love hormones that can soothe pregnancy-related discomforts and transitions. So don't think, oh, I have to. So often we think, oh, I have to make more room for pleasure. Okay, eye roll. It's another thing for me to do. The pleasure is not the end itself. It's the means to an end. So the end is lower stress levels, better pregnancy, happier parent, happier baby, et cetera, et cetera. Include pleasure in your birth plan and prepare accordingly. So that might mean packing lubricants and body safe sex toys in your birth bag. That might mean communicating a plan or potential needs to your partner if they're involved, if they're there. That might mean creating a sensual playlist. That might mean packing something that's comfortable but still makes you feel kind of sexy. That might mean communicating to your birth team, like, if I say this safe word, if I give you this cue, if I give this hand signal, I need y'all to dip out because I need to experience intimacy with myself or my partner and I need privacy. So having a plan embedded in your birth plan that includes pleasure, that includes your sexuality, that includes intimacy, super important, super valuable, and can be extremely beneficial. Okay, so positions we can recommend to pregnant people for sex. On your side, which is great because we keep the weight off of your back and your belly. We don't want to be laying on your back for too long, of course. We don't want to be laying on your belly, obviously. And it keeps you from experiencing too much pressure on your low back. You can tuck a pillow between your knees, have your partner slide behind you, stimulate you either clitorally or penetrate you or however you're going to engage. The pregnant person on top, this is great because you don't have to lay down. You have complete control over the depth of penetration. There will be access to clitoral stimulation if that is something that the pregnant person likes. And overall, they can control the pace and depth, right? For people who are asexual, what are they? Yes, so again, pleasure, let me read the actual question. This is a great question. Kathleen is asking, for people who are asexual, what are ways to center pleasure during pregnancy and birth? Asexual people also exist on a spectrum, just as all sexual beings do, right? So number one, it will depend on the person and their level of comfort and desire for intimacy. You can have the same experiences and the same benefits and the same hormone releases of sex without actually having intercourse. This can include cuddling, if that is something the person is into. This can include back rubs. This can include foot rubs. This can include kissing. This can include head scratching. If there's an essential oil this person likes rubbed on their hands, it is up to that person to determine what level of intimacy they are comfortable with and what they desire. Just because you are asexual, maybe you are not in a relationship, perhaps you're not a person that enjoys masturbation or self-pleasure. There are non-explicitly sexual ways to center pleasure. For me, sometimes pleasure is ice cream, right? For me, sometimes pleasure is watching a specific live performance from a musician that I love. It could be a long bath at just the right temperature with all of the best essential oils and your favorite bath salts and listening to your favorite playlist. So I guess ultimately what I'm saying is it does not have to be explicitly sexual. So if you are in that situation, or maybe you're not asexual and you just are not in a position to be explicitly sexual, think about your senses, your 5 senses: taste, smell, sight, touch. I'm forgetting one. Taste, smell, sight, touch, whatever the 5th one is, right? Think about one of them that you find the most pleasure in. Are you a person that likes food? Is there a really delicious tea that is so good it stimulates you? Is there chocolate that you love that's so good that it it's almost sinful or sexual to you, right? So centering the senses when you're not in a position to be explicitly sexual is a way to get that same hormonal release, that same enjoyment, that same relaxation, and center pleasure without being explicitly sexual. Smell, thank you, Christine. I totally forgot the fifth sense. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. So we were going to, from behind, the only note I had for this was to be sure that you're resting your arms and head on the bed so that you're not like holding up your upper body weight and your belly weight, especially if the person is later in pregnancy. Other things that you can add to improve to the experience is a wedge pillow or a pillow of any kind. There is also a device, I wish I had remembered to include a photo of it, but there's a device called the O-Nut, which if you could envision sort of a condom that controls the depth of penetration, because again, the cervix shifts during pregnancy and during arousal as well. So maybe we don't want to penetrate as deep as normal. It sort of is a stopper or a buffer to make sure that that control can happen without sort of disturbing the flow of the two people that are engaging in whatever they're engaging in. Yes, Vaughn says, I encourage this a lot in postpartum to indulge. Yes, ultimately in this indulgence and this centering pleasure, there is a lot of healing. There is a lot of strengthening the person at their core, not their physical core, but their like spiritual, emotional core, right? So centering this even before pregnancy, preconception, centering this during pregnancy, centering this during birth, centering this during or during postpartum. All of it is a part of your healing. All of it is about your strengthening who you are as a person and just making the experience better. It's a multi-layered sort of success story, or yes. I hope I didn't miss anybody's questions. Yes, Vaughn says, I often tell folks not to hurry up and call their support team if they want/will need to engage in pleasure before their team arrives, or just shut the door. Yes, so having that plan in place of like, okay, at what stage do I think I'm going to be comfortable engaging in intimacy? If there are other people around, am I the type of person that's not going to be able to really get the full enjoyment of it? Okay, so now I know I need to do nipple stimulation, I need to do this and that before I even call my birth team over, just so I can have all of those moments to myself to indulge and engage in those moments before other people arrive. Or if you're a person who doesn't care and you will send your birth team away and have your privacy either with yourself or with your partner, then that can be part of your plan as well. How are you going to communicate that to your birth team that you need time to yourself? Yes, yes. So many people, so many of my clients feel a loss of who they used to be pre-pregnancy. I always encourage pleasure to get, yes, pleasure is the great connector to who we are, who we really are, right? Is a great way to be divinely connected to yourself. Yes, sex toys in the birth bag. Please tell your clients, tell your pregnant friends, remember when you yourself are getting ready to give birth, sex toys in the birth bag, lube in the birth bag, all of it. That's okay. So I think it's Davina. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I sat on the porch while my client made out and masturbated with her partner. Then she had the most incredible 3 hours of ecstatic birth after 55 hours of labor. Yes, the connection. That a lot of times that's all we need to get things moving. That's an incredible story, and what a testimony, right? Goals indeed. Okay, so sex and intimacy beyond penetration, because we know that everyone who becomes pregnant does not enjoy penetration. It's not always accessible to them. It's not always necessary. Sex is not defined by penetration. So we need options outside of that to experience centering pleasure, right? So again, this could be cuddling, showering, and bathing together or alone, setting up an elaborate bath for yourself in whatever way, Oral sex, anal sex, manual stimulation with fingers are all options at any point during pregnancy. Using sex toys, completely safe, completely fine, as long as the toy is made of a body safe material. I don't know if y'all know this, but there are no regulations on sex toy production. So there are a lot of people out here producing toys that are not safe for the body, and they're made of cheap plastics or things that can leave residue behind, or worse, they are porous and they can trap bacteria. So regardless if you are pregnant or not, please, please, please read what your sex toys are made out of, particularly if they are silicone. I advise to avoid plastic altogether. If it's not surgical grade or medical grade silicone or body safe silicone, and it does not explicitly say, don't use it. Opt for glass, opt for steel, opt for something else. So just a note for everyone. Toy recommendations, Lilo I'll drop them in the chat. Lilo is a great brand. Candid is a great brand. Sweet Vibrations is a wonderful brand. Unbound Babes is great. They are woman owned, and I believe they're still POC owned. I'm not sure at this point, but I'll drop some in the chat, because there are some places that everything you buy from them will be safe, but then there are some places where it's spotty. So another sexual or intimate act that you can do that doesn't include penetration: reading erotica, watching porn, kissing, nipple stimulation, others, because we know that what we find pleasure in and what we find erotic or sexually stimulating varies vastly from person to person, right? So it could be anything, and it's up to the pregnant person and their partner, or the pregnant person and themselves, depending on how they are engaging. Okay, so postpartum sex and stress. I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people, regardless of if they have children or not, whether they've been pregnant or not, they have a lack of understanding around the role stress plays in our libido or in our sex drive. When we are stressed out, our bodies cannot process desire, cannot process a sex drive. Our brain literally can't do it. It's been compared by a lot of people who study sex psychology to if you were being chased by a lion, that is how your body feels. That is how our bodies still interpret stress signals, right? It's as if we are under as much stress as being chased by a lion. So if you were being chased by a lion, like, how much sex you trying to have during that time? Probably not very much. Your body cannot process desire and stress at the same time. Not to compare a newborn child to a lion or that level of stress, but that's just how we process that particular emotion. So it's important to remember that when you have new responsibilities, maybe you're not sleeping as much, you're a little bit worried or concerned about certain things around this new child, all of that may interrupt your libido, and that's okay. All of that may put a damper on your sex life, and that's okay, because all of it is temporary and or treatable, right? So changes in libido can of course be attributed to hormonal changes. Changes in libido are due to, or maybe due to, stress or new responsibilities. The cyclical part of this is that sex is also a stress reliever. So if you are postpartum and you're to the point where it is safe or advisable for you to be having sex, specifically penetrative sex again, it can be a stress reliever for you, but you also may not be interested. So it's about finding that balance, scheduling time to be intimate with yourself or with your partner, even if it is on a very, very low level. Maybe it's 5 minutes a week if you can spare it, very, very quickly. It's better than nothing at all. But it also is important to listen to your body, listen to your schedule, listen to the things that are important, and prioritize accordingly, right? So how can we continue to center pleasure postpartum? Explore non-penetrative sex and intimacy until it's advisable to have penetrative sex again, if that is something you're engaging in. Plan for stress and responsibility management before baby is delivered. This is sometimes I don't want to say wishful thinking, but there's only so much you can plan once a baby gets here, right? So we have to talk about this realistically as well. You can strategize with the people in your life on how you're going to make time to center pleasure. Let them know that's a priority for you if you're comfortable sharing that with them. But things don't always go according to plan. We all know this. But having a plan and putting the energy into creating a plan is still important, right? And prioritizing pleasure, even though you know having a baby and having this potentially life-altering experience may not always leave room for that in the way we expect, but creating the plan is still vital. Prioritize pleasure rituals, even if they are only able to happen in small doses of time. So like I said, having 5 minutes a week is better than nothing at all. So if you can only get one super indulgent bath in every 2 weeks, or you can only get a quickie in with your partner, or you only have 4 minutes with your sex toys and yourself, or you only have a few minutes to rub essential oils all over or not essential oils, don't rub essential oils on your body, but rub whatever oils on your body that make you feel good and make you feel comforted. Whatever those small measures are, centering that is more important than being like, oh, I can't do a 2-hour self-care ritual. That's not important. Getting it done, even in small doses of time, is important. The other thing about postpartum sex, remember that it should never be painful. A lot of conversations normalize this idea that, oh, the first few times is going to hurt again. You're going to feel like you did when you lost your virginity. Sex should never be painful, full stop. If it is painful for any reason, slow down, do more foreplay, listen to your body, use lube, even if you don't think that it is necessary, use lube and then use more lube. And that tip goes for if you are pregnant, postpartum, or otherwise. Change positions. Ultimately, if you are experiencing sex and it's uncomfortable, it's painful, it's time to stop, it's time to readjust. So it doesn't mean that you can't have sex and enjoy it, but that just means there has to be an adjustment before you can get to sex, right? And that is it. I put some questions on here to sort of ask to you all, if you feel apt to answer, but I'm taking questions now as well. We have about 15 minutes left. Look at that.
Thank you so much. Oh, I was in the chat box too. I don't know if you saw me.
Yes, yeah.
Question from Iwagia. I hope I said that correctly. What would a baby safe toy be?
So I'm assuming you mean a toy that is safe to use while pregnant. Any sex toy that you use while not pregnant is safe to use while pregnant. I just want to stress, you want it to be made of body safe material and you want it to be clean. Cleaning your sex toys before and after each use is vital, whether you are pregnant or not. So making sure they're clean, they're made of high grade, body safe material is primo. I'm going to drop my recommendations in the chat really quickly so you guys can check them out. I have one more.
onut.co, is that one? I just saw a link.
Yes, Onut isn't explicitly a sex toy. It's more of an aid for people who experience painful penetration. So it is a way to control the
like vaginismus. I never know how to say that damn word.
Vaginismus. Yes, anything like that. Or if you're sensitive to cervical, I keep wanting to call it cervical penetration. That's not really a thing. Or someone touching your cervix, or anything like that, it's a good way to sort of minimize contact and control the depth of penetration.
Do Birthworkers have tips on how to create a birth space conducive to intimate pleasure?
I love this.
It's a good question. I mean, in hospital births, I used pre-COVID. I don't know what it's like now, but I would slather all of the walls in the bathroom with lavender oil and then turn up the shower for steam and close the door. And then, I would tell my clients, like, you should go sit on the toilet for a while, and then tell their partner, like, you should join them to make sure they don't fall or something. And then I will turn off the lights, close the door. And either I put a sign on the front door, tell nurses, like, oh, they're in the bathroom, give them some time. And this is usually when I go eat or something as well.
Yeah. The other thing, I am not a birth worker, but I think that birth workers have the power to, and the influence to normalize making sex and sexuality and intimacy a part of the birthing experience. A lot can come out of you telling your client, this is something you should be doing, and really affirming that and normalizing it in your practice and in your relationships with them. So they'll take it seriously. I don't think the common person would think of sex as a key part of their pregnancy and labor and delivery and postpartum care unless they have someone in their lives, a birth worker or someone else, telling them, like, this is something you need to prioritize sincerely. This is going to improve your experience. And if it doesn't, here's how you can adjust. So I think taking the time to really normalize that is key, so that people can begin to co-create those spaces with you, to tell you, like, oh, I really enjoy, like Effie was saying, I enjoy lavender oil. That makes me feel really relaxed. It's something I put on before I have sex, or whatever the case may be. Or I have a sexy playlist that my partner and I created together that I would like play during certain times. Or when you hear this song, you need to leave the room, so that they can sort of interact with them in that way. Okay, there's some more questions in here. Conversations during prenatal visits about birth, labor, intimacy planned. Midwives usually give space for partner intimacy. I love that. I love that conversation happening. And also, if I can add, if it's not happening, add self-pleasure to it as well. Because sometimes your partner, whether you're pregnant or not, they might be getting on your nerves. Maybe you don't want them to touch you. So are you prioritizing self-pleasure as well? That's a good place to go with it too.
Yeah, I think it's also probably important to talk to them during the prenatals about, or at least like have it on like an intake form, like if you want to have this conversation about sex. I feel like it's such like a taboo to talk about sex as a provider or as, birth worker to your client. But we're talking about everything else. And then it's like during labor, we're telling them, oh, you should get some oxytocin. And they're looking at you like, I haven't had oxytocin going all this 10 months.
Exactly. Another question. This is a great question. I think it's Joyelle. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I am a doula who supports all phases of pregnancy, including abortion and miscarriage. Do you have advice for people to re-engage in pleasure after experiencing an abortion or miscarriage? So I love this question because there's no right or wrong way to engage post-abortion or miscarriage. The only thing I would advise is to have a plan should that person become uncomfortable during the experience. So having a plan for aftercare, if they begin to re-engage and it doesn't go well, having alternatives to whatever form of sex they were going to engage in, so they can still get the intimacy, they can still get the care, they can still have the comfort that they were anticipating, but having an alternative if it doesn't work out. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I just was talking in circles, but ultimately just having a backup plan and having an alternative is always my suggestion.
Yeah.
And going slow, going at your own pace, not rushing things, not going in with any expectations, and having that backup plan. What gets the baby in, gets the baby out, and diving into hormone sounds, motions, pleasure. Good. Hospital talk about nipple stimulation, but not in a pleasure. Yeah, it always feels very clinical and very like.
They just shove a breast pump in your room, like, here, use this. And it's just like, It's not going to work without.
Yeah, or even like massaging the perineum and rubbing on your partner in preparation for birth. Like it feels very clinical. That sounds really hot to me. I don't know about y'all, but that could be really sexy if you
try to throw in, like, when you do the perineum massages, to use lube. And I'm hoping that, like, gives them, like, the key to, like, if you're using lube, then you should play with it.
Yes, keep going. Yes, definitely. Love that. Yeah, so talk about it. I think infusing the idea that this should be pleasurable and this should feel good, and not just you need to do nipple stimulation, blah, blah, blah. That, I think, changes the game. That lens changes the game for a lot of people. Is penetration safe after the water breaks during labor? To my knowledge, no. To my knowledge, no. Just for, like, I don't want to misspeak, but for sanitary purposes, you don't want to expose the baby to any sort of bacteria or anything that could get in the birth canal or in the vagina. So that's not safe. I would say clitoral stimulation, nipple stimulation, things like that, but not penetration. Definitely not.
Yeah, once your amniotic sac breaks, nothing can be inserted. It's an exit out now at that point.
Aftercare is super important for all sex pleasure acts for most people. Yes. Once I had a dad suggest nipple stimulation in labor when it wasn't super necessary at that moment. But when I said that, he said, well, I'm always down, and we had a good laugh. At least there is humor.
Laughter is necessary too.
Yeah, laughter is very necessary. All those feel-good hormones. Yes, that's a pretty funny story. That's a pretty funny story. I can see a lot of parents wanting to get involved, but not necessarily knowing how. So,
well, thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, thank you all for being here and committing your time to this conversation.
Yes. Thank you. I can't wait to watch the recording.
Yay, me too.
Someone said it's revolutionized my doula work. Yes, that's what we're trying to do in the radical future.
Good. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Everybody enjoy your evening. Pleasure yourselves tonight and all nights and all days.
Please. Yes.
All right. Bye.
Bye, y'all. Talk soon.